what I found.
Why did you find sticks?
I have sticks. Well, what can you use sticks for?
Roasting marshmallows. Summertime.
You're right.
See, it's a beautiful day.
Okay, let's go. No. Sticks. You can make dams out of these. If you were a beaver, you'd be all excited
I
because
would.
you'd weave all of those into your dam, and you'd make a little house for yourself, and you'd have babies, and you'd hold all that water back.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Dams have been, they're important for beavers.
they are.
Yeah.
But they're also important for someone else.
Who?
I think for us. We live here in the Monadnock region,
Yep.
and if we didn't have Surrey and Otterbrook, we would be probably covered with water.
All different times of the year, we definitely
Right,
would. Yep.
right. And so, what we've done today is we've taken a look at the Otterbrook, and we're going to take a walk up to the gatehouse and talk with Jim Lewis a little bit more about how they regulate the gates and how they let the water out and things like that. But I just think it's such an interesting place here. I know, again, you guys will always think there's pros and cons to having a dam,
Yep, it's a complicated issue.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that people are really paying more attention to it for the social aspects of responsibility to nature and things like that too.
Yep.
But, we have flooding in Keene every once in a while, but
Right,
can you
Keene
imagine?
Keene is built at the bottom of what used to be a glacial lake,
Right.
so we are very susceptible to flooding in Keene.
Right,
So
right.
we've got these two U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dams that protect us, and also over the years have done a better job protecting the wildlife.
Right,
So it's
right.
great that we're here.
Yeah, so Surrey was built in 1941, 1938, 39 to 41, and then they opened in 42, and then Otterbrook was built in 1958. I just can't imagine. I've never lived without them. I'm sorry, you guys. But I've never lived without having the dams here, so I don't really know anything
Right.
different.
Yeah,
So-
I've never lived without them. I
Yeah.
only moved here, in the year 2001. So clearly I would never have known this area without them.
Now, if you look here, you can see the spans between the two sides and the valley here. Now, I'm sure that there must have been farmhouses here at one time, and there was probably this little teeny brook that went through, and they thought, wow, we've got it from here to there, we can make an embankment dam, and that'll hold the water back, and we'll make these side runoffs, and we'll help everybody. Yeah. So
Why don't we head up to the gatehouse?
I think that would be a great idea.
Learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Meet
Let's go.
Jim. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see the dam here in the back of us here, and then we have the gatehouse right behind us. Now, Jim, I've always wondered what this house was. It's a beautiful stone house. It's just a nice scenic piece, but it actually has uses. What's in there?
Yes, this is the gatehouse, the control house for the dam. The operators and the floodgates are at the bottom of the gate, entering the conduit that flows underneath the dam, and we control all the water that passes through the dam from this point.
Wow.
So can we go in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Great.
this is cool. I've always wondered. Okay, come on, let's go.
Let's go.
Wow. This is absolutely beautiful, and I've got that musty odor because you're around all that water and things, but this is an incredible building.
Yeah, it is. It's actually, Surrey Dam is the oldest Corps of Engineer dams in New England. It was put online in 1941. As you see, it's a beautiful building, stone.
Has most of this all been fairly the same since then, since 1941? I mean, the equipment, or has it changed a lot?
No, the equipment's basically been the same. We've had some upgrades, but pretty much the same. Historically, the building's the same. We've added new windows. These are the operators that operate the floodgates. These are mechanical gates. You got the motors and the drums with cable and the floodgates suspended from there in the conduit where all the water passes through.
Okay.
And they operate just like shutting a valve off in a bathtub. We lower the gates and control the water flow from there.
So,
What
sorry.
would happen if these didn't work?
Well, if one of these failed, we have a standby. We got two shafts, gate shafts with the conduit. If one of these down, we have a standby, which can be moved in either position.
Oh, that's neat. So I see the grating on the floor.
Yeah, this can be raised up and moved, slid into either position behind or upstream of either of these.
So depending on the flow at a particular time, you can open it a couple of feet or a whole lot of feet.
Yep, we can shut down during a storm event. We'll shut down
Entirely?
almost entirely. We keep an aquatic base flow for aquatic life going, so we never shut it down entirely, but we'll shut it down to a bare minimum.
Okay. And then I know that in was it 1987, there was a big flood event in the spring, and you needed to release some water both here and at Otterbrook?
Yeah, well, basically how we operate during any storm event, when all the rivers, we have monitoring gauges throughout upstream and downstream. When the water reaches a level, we'll store water. We'll slow down the river. All the other controlled rivers and streams will be doing whatever they're doing. As soon as they start to subside and we have downstream channel capacity, we'll start opening up and releasing it. What we want to do is retain as much storage capacity in case we get hit with another storm. So we never shut down entirely. In '87, we did reach our spillway crest. We stored the maximum amount we could, at which point the water started going over the side emergency spillway. At that point, whatever comes in goes out.
Right.
It's not like we suddenly release a lot of water. It's just whatever comes in goes out. It's basically like the overflow drain on a bathtub.
Yep.
I mean, you can put the plug in. Once it reaches that point, it goes through that drain and prevents overtopping the dam would cause erosion and dam failure.
It's not really an emergency. It's,
No.
this is the way it's supposed to work.
Exactly.
And that's how it does it, and it does what it's
Exactly, and that's been the misunderstanding sometimes. Even in the 2005 flood event in October, we had a major storm event, 14 inches of rain over several days, and the word got out, we may reach spillway crest, and some people misunderstood that, thinking the dam was going to fail.
Yeah.
It's designed to do that.
Right.
All it means is at that point, whatever comes in goes out.
Right.
In the '87 flood, we reached the spillway. It went over about 1.5 feet above that spillway level. So at that point, the discharge was over 2,400. Normally, the maximum we allow downstream is 1,200 cubic feet per second. And that still stays within the channel capacity.
Right.
It's up high, but it's in the channel capacity.
So even when we have flooding in, say, Keene or some of the low-lying areas, okay, so we had a flood. It was bad. But can you imagine if we didn't have the dam?
Right.
I mean, that's a ton of water.
Yeah, in the history of this project in Otterbrook, except for the '87 flood, when it did reach over the spillway, we've prevented damage from the main stem of the Ashwillick. There's been a lot of nuisance flooding. There's a lot of uncontrolled streams and rivers. You got the Minnewawa coming
Right.
in, Ashbrook, and all the other and sometimes recently we have some intense microburst storm cells.
Right.
Even a small area will drop quantities of rain and you have instant runoff. Basically, this dam can store 6 inches of runoff, and that's not rainfall, that's runoff. So in the spring of the year, if the ground's frozen or supersaturated, a lot of what falls is going to run off.
Yep.
If the gates were totally closed, we could store 6 inches of that. Of course, there's a lot of variables. Usually we're letting water off. Some of that rain is soaking into the ground, so we can store, a bigger event.
You know, what interests me is also one of the things that I know is true now that wasn't true, in the 40s and the 50s, is that there's all this communication and all this information that you have from satellites and computer systems and things like that. I wonder if you just explain a little bit to the viewers about how that works in terms of you're not just an isolated dam here in Surrey, or the one in Otterbrook isn't just isolated. There is communication between all, and a lot of information that you gather from upstream, downstream, and satellites.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more high-tech communication and data collection platforms that have been installed just in the last 10 or 12 years have really helped us run things a lot better. We've got river gauges upstream, downstream, at the sites. We can monitor them remotely, either on a computer or even call them on a cell phone. We can run things a lot more aggressively now. We don't have to store water prematurely. We can let things go at channel capacity and then store water when absolutely necessary. That way we can, in the 1987 event, it was before we had all the automation.
Right.
We had to do a lot more visual inspections, staff gauges on bridge abutments and all. We may have stored water when we absolutely didn't have to. Years before, very often the reservoir control, there are hydraulic engineers that kind of instruct us what to do in a major storm event, would have the dam operator shut the floodgates down to a minimum discharge on a Friday afternoon because there was a forecast of a storm event over the weekend.
Right.
Now we respond quickly, we can monitor things, and we won't start storing water before absolutely necessary.
Actually, right. That's and like you said, there are engineers and things upstream, downstream, and aren't there? The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has some regional headquarters.
Yeah.
And where are they?
Well, our New England District Corps of Engineer headquarters is in Concord, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And we have a whole team of engineers of various disciplines, from geotechnical to structural, mechanical, electrical, and our reservoir control team, the hydraulic engineers. Our controller, our primary controller, actually works out of the Krell, Lyme, Hanover, New Hampshire office. And we're in constant communication. I mean, like with cell phones and communications radios and the internet, it's really working closely together now, better than ever.
It's so interesting because one thing that I didn't know until we started talking about this was, you know, I always think of Surrey Dam and Otterbrook as being our local dams, and they do their local job. But then we started talking about this and realizing that it goes way beyond just the Monadnock region. I mean, these dams are in the Monadnock region, but there's so much information, and there's a whole team of people, it sounds like, that are working together to make sure these dams work properly. So I think that that's just fascinating. And also to know that, that like you said, there's, you know, a cell phone contact, and, you know, it's just a constant stream of information so that this works as well as it can.
Right. So is there more to see than just up here?
Yeah, absolutely. We can take a walk downstairs and see one of the flood gates.
Okay.
It's a big steel configured structure of about 5 feet by 10 feet, and then we just lower those down into the conduit. So we can take a walk down and take a look
Great,
at
let's
that.
do it.
Sounds great.
Over this way, I think, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Let me get the lights on.
So as we were coming down, Jim added, or he raised up this third gate here.
And this is the backup gate.
Right, right. And so what we have here, from what I understand from Jim, is these are the two real gates, Jim?
Yes, these are
Okay.
the primary gates that are in operation most of the time. If we had some equipment failure, breakdown, we could use this standby gate, which can be put into either gate shaft. So we always are operational.
Yeah.
So how far is this? I mean, this is showing most of it, right?
Yeah, we brought it all the way up. This would lower down about 60 feet to the gate floor in the pipe that goes under the dam and can shut down. We can shut it right down to nothing or keep it up just a few tenths of an inch and let some water out for fish life downstream.
Yeah. So you were saying in the winter, you don't put it down, or you don't keep it up completely. You put it down a little bit.
Normally during most of the year, we leave the gates open a couple of feet, and there's a weir, concrete weir upstream, and whatever passes over that weir just runs right through. Most of the time we go operate with run of river. Whatever comes in, goes out. Just a natural flow. During a storm event, of course, we'll slow it down and store water. In the wintertime, we do close the gates somewhat and raise the reservoir up a couple of feet just to keep these gates underwater to prevent freezing up so they maintain their operation.
Right.
And have these been replaced over the years?
Yes, yeah. The cables have been replaced, they're all maintained. The two primary floodgates were replaced about 10 years ago. This standby, because most of its life it's been out of the water, is in pretty pristine condition. This didn't require.
So this is
replacement.
original.
This is original equipment.
That's great.
Yep.
Now, this is, you said like 10 feet?
Yeah, it's 5 by 10 feet.
So when you think of this huge dam, that all it is a 5 by 10 foot piece of steel, heavy steel, but
Controlling the
that's
water
what's
flow.
controlling
It's-
all that water, 10,
Absolutely. It's
Whatever
very
tons of
similar
water.
to just
Yeah.
turning a valve on a bathtub or a
Right.
kitchen sink. And these just go down, seal the pipe, throw the water down.
Yeah.
So it's basically just like turning a faucet on and off.
right, right. So we've gone over all of this stuff about the dams now. Otterbrook and Surrey are about the same, they just have different styles.
Different
and-
configuration.
Right.
These are mechanical. Otterbrook is hydraulically operated gates. The watershed, we control a watershed of 100 square miles at Surrey Dam. Otterbrook is about 50 square miles. Different flow rates, different maximum immediate channel capacity. They both operate in coordination. We're kind of unique. We prevent or reduce any flood damage more locally in the Keene area, just because of the topography of Keene being a big bowl, basically. We're in a collection of dams. The Corps of Engineers has 35 flood control dams in New England. We're in what is called the Upper Connecticut River Basin. The other dams in Vermont on the West River and the Black River and the Onpapanusick and the Ottauquechee River. Collectively, we prevent or reduce the flow in the main stem of the Connecticut and reduce flood damage downstream in Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Right. So I was just doing a little bit of research, but the Connecticut River flows from, is it Quebec or someplace in
Here
Canada,
up in the
all the way
upper
down.
stretch of New Hampshire, all the way down to Long Island Sound.
Right, right.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of places along there that can really be affected by all that water. Because water is such a beautiful thing. It's so gentle. And you see a drop and it's just pristine. But when you see massive amounts of water, it takes on a different
It's
character.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I was, and I think about, so both Otterbrook and Surrey in the immediate Monadnock region protect the bowl of Keene.
Yes.
Okay, because Keene being formed from, a glacial lake, we're so susceptible and at risk for flooding in this area. So these have protected us since the 40s. This one since the 40s, Surrey since the 50s.
Otterbrook in 58 it was put
Okay.
online, yes.
Okay.
So the dam is here. It has a purpose. But what other things does the dam have to offer? I mean,
Okay.
we have a swimming area at both locations. There's a camping area at one of them, I believe, and places for people to rent.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
family
Originally, the
gatherings.
intent was, of course, civil works, flood damage reduction. The dams were built. Shortly thereafter, the federal government, the Corps of Engineers, said we have this resource. Let's have some multiple use. So we established recreation areas at Otterbrook and Surrey. We have day use areas during the summer months for swimming, picnicking, group outings. We have picnic shelters, covered picnic shelters. We provide sites for triathlons, scouting camps, all kinds of other things. During the off-season, when the parks are technically closed to vehicle traffic and the facilities are shut down, it's still open to the public. There's fishing and hunting and hiking and bike riding. There's snowmobile trails. We have here at Surrey, there's 1,600 acres. In Otterbrook, another 500 acres. Multi-use. We encourage the use.
And there's a lot of habitat. I was looking at your website as well, and it lists a lot of different bats, which we will talk on another show. There's all kinds of other animals around, birds.
Well,
There's a lot of
Jim
habitat.
mentioned to me that bald eagles nest around here.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
So all kinds of different wildlife. I mean, it's a perfect natural habitat for all sorts of different critters and fish and everything. So it's great. Yeah.
And both of them are what, 5 minutes out of Keene, 10 minutes out of Keene? I mean, if
Absolutely.
you haven't been to one of these dams, you're missing out because there is so much to see, and it's quiet. Neither of them will allow motorboats, is that
We
correct?
have a reduced horsepower,
Reduced, okay.
kind of just a fishing
So it's
trolling
quiet.
motors. It's quiet,
Yeah.
it's pristine.
Yeah.
The water quality is monitored for the swimming area. It's a very safe, beautiful environment for people to recreate.
Right. So we're just about finished with the show. Now, if you had to think of one time in your employment here and your experience, what would be the one time that you really would look back on and say, wow, I can't believe we did this.
Well, it's a toss-up. I've been here at these two sites for 27 years. We have two major storm events. The one in 1987 that set the record, we reached spillway maximum storage capacity, and then the water lapped over our overflow spillway. That was pretty dynamic. The storm event in October of 2005, because it was all snow, no snow melt, no, just a 14 inches of rain in a short period of time. It was devastating in other watersheds up on the Cold River in Alstead, New Hampshire, where there was unfortunately some tragic loss of life. But that was almost more dynamic than the 87 flood. We did not set any records as far as we were close. We were within a foot of spillway, but that was probably more memorable.
Was that one of those things where you're working around the clock?
We worked around the clock, both events. We were around the clock. We had staff 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
around the clock. We took shifts and we're here. We worked closely with disaster preparedness coordinators, the city of Chief Lamoureux, the fire chief of city of Keene, and a lot of other emergency responders.
Yeah, that's one of those times when water becomes scary.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
So what do you see as the future of the dams that we have in the area?
Well, keep maintaining, operating pretty much the same. We have become more sensitive to environmental concerns. We have an endangered dwarf wedge mussel immediately below Surrey. We funded more studying and monitoring them. We have, over the last 10, adopted a more sensitive approach to regulating. We do, like I said, go run of river for most of the time, and we have ramping rates. We in a flood event, it's a little different. We shut down pretty quickly. But normally, if we're doing maintenance activities, we keep the water flowing as much as possible, or change the gate settings in slow increments, so we maintain a better environmental flow.
Wildlife and
Yeah.
things. Yeah, it's great.
So, there's pros and cons to having dams, but I think that for Keene especially, the pros are definitely there. I mean, if we didn't have them, we would have water everywhere. I mean, you can look back and hear stories about what it looked like in the low-lying areas back in the 1800s, back in the 1900s, when they didn't have dams. And they had a lot to deal with. And we worry about it now, where we have a foot of water, but I'm sure that what they had to deal with was a lot tougher. So it's incredible.
Yeah, historical floods, of course, the floods of 1927 and then in the 30s were kind of the inspiration for the federal government to start building flood control facilities. Of course, in that time, there's been a lot more development, so it's even more delicate.
Right.
Some of the development may perhaps have exacerbated flooding. There's less natural areas for the water to soak into,
Right.
a faster runoff. That's somewhat complicated.
Because people don't realize that every time you take trees down and you leave a bank open, that's a chance or those trees are not sucking up all that water. And so it really does make a difference. Like earlier in the 18 and 1900s, people did this along the Connecticut. We have all that beautiful farmland and they always get flooded out, but that was all trees at one time. So it wasn't always floodland, or it wasn't always garden or
Farmland.
Yeah, the runoff.
Yeah. So I think I've learned quite a bit today, and it's
Yeah.
really been fun being
Down inside.
Yeah, in the gatehouse.
And I do want to mention that that sometimes I know that my son came to the Surrey Dam when they were studying water, so it's a great resource for educators to come and teach kids about how you manage water and things. And I've learned much more than I thought I would today. So
So you have a website.
We have a website, it's easily accessed. You just do a search for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New England, and you can bring up a site with all the dams in New England, what's going on, recreation, flood control, the sites, the hydro data. You can see we have a lot of paddlers, canoers, kayakers will access that, see what the flow is at any given time. So it's an excellent resource.
great.
And all right here in my backyard.
It's amazing.
So we would love to hear from you. You can email us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com, and Jenna or myself will get back to you. If you have any suggestions or have questions about shows, anything you'd like to hear about, please feel free to contact us. Thank you, Jim.
You're very welcome. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful having you visit.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you again in my backyard.